मैंने आपकी क्लास में एंड किया है लास्ट क्लास में. Okay, let me show you these slides. Maybe you can tell me better.
Actually, we were doing the greenhouse effect and greenhouse gases. We were talking about in this topic, on this topic.
What, Pallavi?
We were talking about the greenhouse gases and greenhouse effects. What are they?
No, Pallavi. That will be restricted only to your Wednesday classes, because that is that I'm taking in combined with food tech. Okay, but
Okay.
rest of the classes, when I'm taking your individual department, I'll be continuing with the course that I was taking earlier. Okay, so that is what I'm asking. Means before Wednesday, I think I took your class on Tuesday. So no, not on Tuesday, on Monday. So till what point means where I finished? Had I finished and had I showed you this global thing? Had I discussed these tables
Yes,
with you?
yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine. Okay, then I think I will have to discuss with you the outbound ecosystem. Slide. Okay, so there were a few things to be added in the slides, which I have actually discussed in the classes. Now, I have to tell you something about grasslands. Okay. Now, when I was telling about the grasslands, there are a few things that I want to highlight. Is that, like, means as I had discussed about different type of forests, that depending on whether they are tropical, temperate, or polar region, they are said to be a tropical forest or temperate forest. Similarly, grasslands are also divided into the one growing in regions and another growing in the temperate regions, right? Now, the one that is going, the grasslands that are growing in the tropical regions, they are mostly referred to as savanna. And because most of the tropical part across the globe is covered by your African continent, so the grasslands that are found there in these regions, which are experiencing less amount of rainfall, but they are in tropical regions, there they have these tropical grasslands. Those are known as the savanna. Okay. Now in the temperate regions, now of course we know that temperate region is mainly present, or the countries that are there in temperate regions comprise of a European part of the entire European nation, your parts of North America, Canada, your parts of China, means the entire China, and a few northern part of India, and your parts of southern part of Russia. So in these regions, the grasslands or that are there, in of course, where the rainfall is not that enough, so that forest can flourish. So these grasslands are known by different names depending upon place to place. So for example, in USA and Canada, they are known as prairie. Okay, prairies. Let me highlight it. Can't use highlighter. Anyways, let me use the shape then. Okay, no. Okay, so these are pretty. Okay. Okay. And in Russia, I mean in the Russia and in the Asian part, they are known as your steppes. Okay. In South American part, they are known as pampas. Okay. So prairie are the tall grasses. Those are in the temperate regions of Asia and Russia. Okay. Or in European region, European parts. Okay. Prairies are the tall steppes. Okay. The prairies are tall grasses that are present in the region of, or the grasslands that are present in American part or American continent, whereas your steppes, prairies, and pampas is the one that is growing in South American continent and parts of South Africa. Okay, major grasslands in African continent is occupied by tropical grassland, which is savanna. Okay. So this is the difference when I was trying to tell on I'm just telling about the grasslands. Another important thing I want to show you is different countries that lie in these regions, so that you will have an idea. Okay, what sort of ecosystem should be should means you means if you are aware about, okay, in these locations lie in these zone, you can have a general picture and an idea on what type of ecosystem will be there. Okay, so when I had talked about tropical zone, which is across equator on either side of equator in the northern and the southern hemisphere, so they mostly comprise of your African continent, major part of India. Okay, major part of India, that is the southern and the central India is in the tropical zone, all of Southeast Asia and northern parts of Australia. Okay, then of course Southern America, and these are the regions which contain Amazon. Okay, so Amazon is found here, and that is why they are one of the the dense rainforest in across the globe. They are also said to be as the lungs of globe because they are present in the heavily rainfall regions. Okay. Now in India also the rainforests are there, which experience huge rainfall in the down southwards. That is towards the regions of Kerala. Okay, close to the regions of Kerala. For example, your Silent Valley is an example of your rainforest. Okay. Wait, I'll tell you. Okay. Now that in the temperate zone comprises of your northern part of America, Canada, entire Europe, China, and of course your Mongolia, Japan, and part of Russia. Okay, major part of Russia. So those all comprise of temperate zone. In southern hemisphere, southern part of Africa, and a very small part of Australia is also there in temperate zone, including New Zealand. Okay, and of course in polar regions we can find these comprises of Iceland, Denmark, some part of Scandinavian countries, Siberian part of Russia, and of course your Greenland. Okay, they are all in your polar zones. Okay, so now subtropical zone is of course transition zone. So we can see that India is present in two major parts, the tropical zone and the subtropical zone. Okay, few parts, of course, because there is no such clear line of distinguish between the tropical and subtropical and temperate. So very few parts in India are present in is there in the tropical zone also. Okay, so whenever we discuss about forest in India, there are 5 major distributions of forest types in India. These are your tropical rainforest, tropical deciduous, temperate rainforest, temperate deciduous, and the evergreen forest. Okay, so we will then I'll show you a slide where I'll show you the distribution of different forest types in India. Okay, so as far these 5 major types are concerned, so your tropical rainforest is present in down south and in the Western Ghat region. Example is Silent Valley in Kerala. Okay, now as for the tropical deciduous forest is concerned, so rest of your central India and some parts of your northern parts cover your tropical deciduous forest. Okay, now if I talk about temperate deciduous forest, so they are mostly confined to the northern part of deciduous forest. Okay, and in the eastern northeastern part, the type of rainforests that are present here, they are said to be as a temperate rainforest. Okay, so tropical rainforest is down south, but temperate rainforest is somewhere in the northeastern part, okay, because there the temperature are quite cold. Okay. And the fifth type, that is the evergreen forest, they are present in the mountain region when we are talking about the variation in the temperature with respect to height. Okay. Now, is that clear? ये clear हो गया बेटा? So I think I had discussed about this global map as well, and then there is one map of India. Okay, so of course they have divided into semi-evergreen, wet evergreen. Okay, but if we broadly see, then we need to take into consideration 5 major forests in India. Okay, you need not to go in details or in minute details and in depth about the differences in these forests. Just remember these things, that these 5 main forests are your tropical rainforest, tropical deciduous forest, temperate rainforest, temperate deciduous, and evergreen. Okay, evergreen are in the mountain regions. Your tropical rainforest are in these regions, in these pockets. Okay, the Kerala, Silent Valley, and a thin layer in the Western Ghat. Your tropical deciduous occupies the major part of your central India and parts of North India. Your temperate rainforest is mostly in the northeastern part of the country, okay, where the temperature are cooler. Temperate deciduous is present in northern part of India, like in these regions, in these parts, where the temperatures are quite cool. Okay. So is that clear? समझ में आ गया बेटा यहाँ पे? ठीक है, तो जब भी आप कंपैरिजन करोगे, आप हमेशा टेबल बनाओगे और उसमें आप इस तरीके से उसे डिस्टिंग्विश करोगे बेस्ड ऑन योर 5 इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग्स. फर्स्ट, लोकेशन, then are your physical factors that in turn is divided into 2 major factors of climate, light and temperature, and soil. Okay, so it's necessary if you mention about an average rainfall and average temperature in that region, because those 2 are the influential factors as far ecosystem is concerned. Okay. Okay, and then of course contains the biological factors which comprises of your plants and your animals. Okay, that is your flora and the fauna. Okay, now of course in flora, if it's good if you can explain the layers, like in rainforest and the deciduous forest, your layers are a bit different. Okay, and of course you have to give example of names of plant species and animal species that are there in India. Okay, because most of the time, because in case if they ask you the question keeping in mind your Indian subcontinent, define or distinguish or classify or compare between your aquatic and forest ecosystem. In that case, you have to mention about the names of the species or example of the species of plants and animals that are there in India. Okay, but if they ask in general, then you are open to write and take examples across the globe. Okay, so this is an Indian map. Okay, now here is a moti image of understanding, okay, how these forests look like. Okay, so in the left down corner, this is an example of rainforest. So we can see that they are having a thick foliage. They comprise of lots of climbers, creepers, and trees are very, very tall. Okay, these are your rainforest, and we can see the floor is so thickly covered with vegetation. Okay, on the right corner, that is this big image is of the deciduous forest. Okay, so this is mostly I think this I believe that this is some summer seasons or maybe 2 winter seasons where the trees have all shed their leaves in one common season. Okay, these are deciduous forests. So we can see that, okay, forest is still thick, but they are not as green and dense as that of your rainforest because they don't receive that much amount of rainfall. Okay. Now, on the upper left corner is a vegetation that contains trees of very less height, and they are very sparse vegetation. They are quite at distance and very few vegetation. This is your desert ecosystem. Okay, and now desert ecosystem is also divided into like your cold desert, hot desert, and of course in desert also it can be an acute desert, which contains no vegetation, or there will be desert that contains some vegetation in the form of forest, which will then said to be as your dry deciduous forest in the desert region. Okay. Now this picture in the center is also an example of dense forest, but these are your coniferous evergreen forest, and they are mostly present in the regions of in mountainous region. Okay. So is it clear? Is this picture clear? Right. Okay. So now we talk about and we come to next important ecosystem is that is aquatic. Okay. I'll take the desert ecosystem lately. Okay, मैं desert ecosystem दूंगी, or should I discuss it here right away? Okay, let me discuss this desert ecosystem here also. Okay. Now desert ecosystem, desert means implies, I had already discussed this here. Desert is present in these regions which is predominant by very, very less rainfall. Okay. Then depending upon the temperature, whether they are in the colder region, it can be colder regions, it can be your tundra or taiga. If I'm defining in terms of altitude, then it will be your cold desert or the mountainous desert. And if I'm talking about in a very, very high temperature prone region, then these are your hot or tropical deserts. Okay. So in India, if I talk about Thar Desert, okay, which is towards the western side, and there the temperature is very, very high, those are your tropical deserts. Okay, tropical hot deserts. Okay. Now these deserts are devoid, they contain rainfall less than 50 centimeters annually. Okay. And sometimes it's only about 20 centimeters, not more than that. Okay. And because of very, very less amount of rainfall and very high amount of temperature, vegetation is not very thick. Because vegetation is very, very less, so of the soil is very, very poor. The decomposers, population of decomposers is very less, it's very small, and they contain huge amount of minerals like sodium, potassium, because there is no rainfall, so these minerals haven't been washed away in the deeper layers as it used to happen in the rainforest, as when we were discussing about the rainforest. Okay. Now most of the species in these desert ecosystem are the species that have acclimatized or adopted themselves in course of evolution that can thrive and that can live in very, very dry conditions with least amount of moisture in the atmosphere. Okay, so that is why when we used to study this botany, especially the thorns. Okay, so when you imagine some cactus plant, okay, now there is this huge the broad leafy fleshy structure. Okay, interestingly, that broad leafy fleshy structure is modified form of stem, and leaves instead have in course of evolution have modified themselves into thorns. Okay, so why they have done it? The leaves have reduced them to thorns, thin thorns, so that the surface area can be reduced and the evapotranspiration can be reduced from the surface, and in that way they can conserve water. Now the fleshiness of that stem is there because they are covered by a wax coating. Now this wax coating prevent the unnecessary precipitation of water from their surface. Okay, transpiration of the water from their surface. Okay, so in that ways they are able to maintain their water. So I hope if you have seen this this thing on wild and animals, something like that, a documentary that comes in Discovery. So it has often been told to people that if you are thirsty, there means by cutting this fleshy stem of the thorn, you can actually chew them and can have water with them. Okay, but of course not all these species are there, or not all these species of cactus are easy to have water. Okay? There are certain species which can be toxic as well. Anyways, so these are all the modifications that have taken. That is why the height of the tree is small there in where some amount of water is available. Why they are small? Because in order to support greater height, they have to support greater foliage, and for the greater foliage, greater evaporation will happen, as a result of which they will need more water, which is of course is not present in those regions. Okay, so they all have adapted themselves. Now, when the vegetation is sparse, when the vegetation is very less, then of course number of organisms are also very less. So that is why desert ecosystem are the least biodiversified regions. Okay, but that doesn't mean that they don't contain species. Of course, they have certain very good species. Like for example, if I talk about this some camels, of course, camels are there. There are good number of varieties of your scorpions, your snakes, your lizards that thrive in the desert ecosystem. Rats, yes, rats are there that thrive in the desert ecosystem. Okay? And of course, they all are part of the food web and food chain, so they also form the part of your desert ecosystem. Okay, so this is your tropical desert, the one in India that is the Thar Desert. Now, if I talk about your cold deserts, then these are the deserts, the desert region, which of course again don't have less means much amount of rainfall. They have a very less amount of rainfall, but here the temperatures are very cold, exactly opposite to the hot deserts. Okay, so these are said to be as a cold desert. Okay, now in India, the cold deserts are in the mountainous regions of Leh and Ladakh, or in Lahul Spiti Valley, where you find that there is no vegetation. Okay, and there it's all rock and a few small herbs or herbal vegetation is there, and mostly it is covered with snow. And during springtime, when the snow melts, then some herbaceous species they can be found. Okay, they can be found there. So these are your cold deserts. And across the globe, your Gobi Desert in China, Tibet Plateau in Tibet, they all are examples of your cold deserts. Okay. Now, tundra is the region which is again desert. Desert in terms, you won't be seeing sort of sand dunes there, but they are frigid and they are so cold that there is no vegetation there. Vegetation is mostly confined in forms of lichens and mosses there. Okay, so those are your tundra. They appear something like this. Wait, I'll show you the picture. This, the one in the center. This one is your tundra. Okay, so we can see that very few herbaceous species are there, and almost it is covered in snow all everywhere. Okay. This one is an example of your tropical desert, okay? The hot desert, I may say. And this one is an example of your cold desert. Okay. Here also we don't have any vegetation, but this is a basic difference between your mountainous or the cold desert and the tundra region. Tundra region are the desert regions which are there across the poles, but mountain deserts are the deserts which are present at the higher altitudes where there is no vegetation. Okay. So, so I hope now the desert ecosystem is clear to you. Clear, Evita? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so now we come to aquatic ecosystem. Now, aquatic ecosystem, as I had already told you the classification, that they can be free flowing, that is said to be as your lotic, like the rivers, etc., or they can be the standing type, for example, your ponds and lakes. Okay, so this is the classification of the freshwater, and in marine ecosystem, they can be estuarine or the coastal ecosystem, or they can be into the open sea. Okay. So we'll first discuss about your lentic type of ecosystem, that is your pond ecosystem. Okay. Now, if I talk about pond ecosystem, now before understanding what type of means how the food web or food chain or what are the different organisms at different levels there, at different trophic levels, we will first understand how the pond ecosystem divide itself into different layers. Okay? Wait, I'll open something. Okay. So the pond ecosystem covers in freshwater ecosystem, and it comprises of less than 1% of our Earth surface. Okay. So we can say कि less than 1% में बहुत ही छोटा सा हिस्सा जो है हमारे freshwater ecosystem का है. Interestingly, सारे का सारा पॉपुलेशन जो है वो फ्रेश वाटर के ऊपर डिपेंडेंट है. And that is why water crisis or the problem of local water crisis is going to come. Is the next crisis that we are going to face. Okay. Anyways, and fresh water is the prices of about 41% of the ocean. Okay. Now, this fresh water, I had already told you, they can be distinguished either into form of a slow-moving water or stagnant system like pools and ponds and lakes, or they can be running mode. Those comprises of streams and rivers. And there is third variety, that is your wetlands. Now, how is wetland different from pond? Now, ponds are deeper water bodies, stagnant deeper water bodies, but wetland can be shallow also. They can be even a small gadha, means a big gadha filled with water. Okay? And these are formed mainly in the regions where the soil becomes saturated with water, as a result of which it absorbs a seepage pani ka aur zyada nahi hota hai, and they create a temporary or maybe sometimes a permanent pool of water. Okay? So those are your wetlands. Now let's talk about first your ponds or lentic ecosystem. ठीक है, ponds के बारे में हम बात करते हैं कि कैसे होते हैं. ठीक है. Now they are divided into the littoral zone. Okay. Now this littoral zone is the shallow part. ठीक है. इस shallow part में आपके सबसे ज्यादा rooted vegetations होंगे जो आपके base से root करके ऊपर तक जा सकते हैं और they can remain inside. And then there is this offshore zone, which is your pelagic zone. ठीक है. और मतलब shore से थोड़ा दूरी पर. ठीक है. So they can be your shallow zone, which is your littoral zone, or they can be offshore zone. Second is the offshore, which is pelagic. Okay. Now this pelagic zone is further divided into two zones: photic zone. Water zone or the aphotic zone means that this is the zone which does not receive ample amount of light. Okay. Now another name for photic zone is your limnatic zone, and of the deep water zone is known as your profundal zone. Okay. So broadly, you can say that a pond ecosystem can be divided into three zones of littoral zone, limnatic zone, and profundal zone. Clear? समझ में आया? मैं एक बार फिर से समझा देती हूँ. ठीक है. Now broadly, अगर हम पहले सरफेस से चलते हैं तो एक हो गया आपके शोर के पास वाला एरिया, एक हो गया शोर से दूर वाला रीजन. शोर के पास वाला रीजन, which is your shallow region, is known as your littoral zone. शोर से दूर वाला रीजन is which is your open water pond system, that is your pelagic zone. Now this littoral or the shallow zone comprises the most amount of vegetation, but rooted, and they can also come out of the water or they may remain submerged inside the water. Now, offshore zone, which is known as a pelagic zone, further is divided into two zones depending on the amount of sunlight it is receiving. It is a photic zone that receives high amount of sunlight, and deep water that does not receive any sunlight or receive very less amount of sunlight, known as aphotic zone. Another name for open water, the photic zone, limnatic zone, and the deep zone is the profundal zone. Clear? Is clear? Is clear? किसी को यहाँ पे zones में कोई doubt?
No, ma'am.
Fine. So okay, now before marine, we must discuss about the type of ecosystem that are there. Okay. So now, how or what are the different types of organisms or pond ecosystem? Okay. So at the producer levels, they comprises of your wait. Okay, anyways. So if we talk about the food web of your pond ecosystem, at the producer level, they comprises of your species like cattail, coontail, some algae, and some aquatic plants. Okay. Then at the consumer level, which of course feed on your algae or phytoplanktons or on zooplanktons or on these plant species. They comprises of your snails, fishes, beetles, frogs, turtles, etc. In the top predators, they comprises of very big fishes that very big fishes or your big amphibians like your herons, alligators, and your large fishes. And even top above that is the heron, okay, that feeds on these bigger fishes, or kingfisher that feed on bigger fishes, or the human being that feeds on these bigger fishes. Okay, so these are your tertiary consumers: the heron, the human being, or the kingfishers, which are feeding on these bigger fishes. Now, these bigger fishes form secondary consumer, and these bigger fishes feeding on small turtles, frogs, or otters. These are all your primary consumers. Okay. In any doubt? Okay, so if you are asked about an aquatic ecosystem, you will classify aquatic ecosystem, you will define about layers, and then you will tell about what are the different species at producer level, at primary consumer, at secondary consumer, and at tertiary consumer levels. Is it clear, beta? Is this clear? Okay. Now, when I talk about another classification of the aquatic ecosystem in freshwater, that is lotic, that is your running water streams. Now, unlike pond ecosystem, they don't have clear zone formation. Why? Because the water here is in continuous state of running. So here the zone classification, unlike your littoral and your open, that is limnatic and profunda zone, here the zone is different and is based on the velocity of the water and how much amount of, means what is the level of turbulence with which the high amount of oxygen is dissolved in it. Okay, so they can be, so the streams are basically divided into upland region and the the lowland rivers. Okay, now upland rivers are mostly the streams which have very high velocity because they are rushing down, and lowland part of the rivers are the rivers which contain or which have comparatively lesser velocity and lesser speed. So if you imagine Ganga river in Haridwar or Rishikesh, and you imagine one Ganga river in Banaras or Varanasi, of course we can easily compare their speed. Where in Rishikesh or in Ganga, we can see that there is huge and heavy current because river is flowing down this land. Unlike that, if we see Ganga river in Varanasi, then of course we can easily say that there the velocity is very less. Okay, so that is the lowland area or lowland regions of the river, and that is your upland regions of the river. Okay, now most of the food in the river ecosystem is present in lowland region. Why? Because in upland region the speed and the flow is very high, so there the nutrients are not able to stay for longer period of time. But in lowland rivers, because the velocity is very less there, so they are very rich in nutrient as far in terms of algal concentration, etc. is there. Okay. Now, okay, fine. Next, we discuss about your wetlands. Okay. Now, wetlands, as I have already told you, that when the soil becomes so much saturated that it further does not allow the water to percolate down, as a result of which water starts getting accumulated in those regions, leading to the formation of small temporary or permanent pools. Those are known as your wetlands. Okay. Now, wetlands are also 4 types. They can be swamp, they are marsh, fen, and bogs. Okay. Now they have a slight differences between them. Now even sometimes rainforest also, if they are experiencing continuous long rainfall or heavy rainfall for a very long hours and for a number of days, you can see that there in certain parts which are in a big depression region, they will lead to the formation of small pools beneath the tree line. Okay, those small pools are said to be as your swamps, or we can, no, not swamps, these are said to be as your marshy areas. Okay, so Anything else? Okay, and these wetlands are also very, very important because they serve as a life for not just aquatic organisms, but they also serve as a breeding grounds for several species like birds, like alligators, like turtles, and so on. Okay, so these wetlands are very, very important. Very, very important because they act as a sponge. Have you heard about what is a sponge? Sponge क्या होता है जानते हो बेटा?
में बहुत bits होते हैं,
एग्जैक्टली
हाँ।
एग्जैक्टली ठीक है। तो स्पंज का क्या होता है, अगर आप किसी कटोरे में पानी रखोगे, अगर आप स्पंज को रख दोगे तो वो क्या करेगा, सारे पानी को एब्जॉर्ब कर लेगा, ठीक है। बट अगर आप किसी उस स्पंज को फिर आप उठाकर ऐसी जगह लेके जाते हो जिसमें, या ऐसे ऐसे प्लेट पर रखते हो जिसमें पानी नहीं है, जैसे ही आप उसे स्क्वीज करोगे उसमें से पानी निकल जाएगा, ठीक है। Similarly, these wetlands acts as a sponge. Okay, these are the nature's sponges. What they do is that when they receive extra amount of rain, they will store and bind that water in themselves. ठीक है, waste जाने देंगे उसको, ठीक है। And moment the nearby regions of the wetland they are devoid of water or they are not receiving much amount of water, they will squeeze all the water that is stored in them and they will divert it to those regions. तो उससे क्या होगा? They always keep in check the water table, groundwater table. So they are a very, very good source of maintaining the groundwater table. So drying of wetlands implies that there is no such source of supply for water to these regions, which if in case of if there is no rainfall or if there is less water, they won't be replenish themselves again with the water. Because these wetlands are very, very important because they help in maintaining the water levels if those regions are devoid of water supply. And in this way, they also keep in check the water table, with which they also keep a rich flow or the presence of water in the wells or in the depressions and so on. Okay, so these wetlands are very, very important. Okay, so now we will discuss about marine ecosystem and then we will finish it. Okay, so I think after marine ecosystem, I will discuss then about estuary. And I think that this very small part of estuary will be there, will be remaining, and this will get over. Okay. So now let's talk about your marine ecosystem. Okay. Now, marine ecosystem comprises of about 71% of your Earth's ecosystem, Earth's surface. Okay, and it contains the water, which is rich in minerals like sodium, salt, chlorine, and so on. Okay, so 85% of the sea water is composed of mineral, and only 35% is water. Okay. Now, salinity, of course, varies. That measurement of the mineral content of the water is known as your salinity. Okay, and it varies from place to place. Okay. Now, like your pond ecosystem, marine ecosystem is also divided into zones. Okay. So as I had already told, that littoral zone is the zone which is close to shore. So this region that is close to shore is littoral. Okay. Once again, remember this division of the zone is और the limnatic and of course profound as well. उसी तरीके से मराइन इकोसिस्टम भी आपका हॉरिजॉन्टली हम डिवाइड करें. अगेन द वन दैट इज क्लोज टू शोर इज योर लिटोरल, देन कम्स योर पेलाजिक, जो कि हमने वहां पर भी डिवाइड किया था. नाउ पेलाजिक, या कि ऑफ कोर्स सी और ओशियन का लेंथ तो बहुत है, तो सिर्फ और सिर्फ एक पेलाजिक बोलना नहीं होगा. This pelagic zone is also divided into two zones, neritic or the neritic and your oceanic zone or the open ocean. So this neritic zone is mainly comprises of your coral reef. ठीक है, लिटोरल और neritic zone में ही आपके कोरल रीफ होते हैं. इसके बाद आपके कोरल रीफ नहीं होते, क्योंकि कोरल रीफ को एम्पल अमाउंट ऑफ सनलाइट चाहिए. ठीक है, और आपके इन डीपर लेयर्स पे कोरल रीफ को और चूंकि कोरल रीफ को ग्रो करने के लिए सब सरफेस में चाहिए, तो अगर वो इन सरफेसेस पे ग्रो करेगा इस डेप्थ पर, then of course it won't be having, they won't receive ample amount of rainfall. ठीक है, so the coral reef are mainly present in the neritic zone. ठीक है, now oceanic zone is the zone जहां पर कि आपकी 200 मीटर से ज्यादा गहराई होना शुरू हो जाती है. ठीक है, and they forms your Bethel abyssal और the benthic zone कहलाते हैं, जिसे कि हम Bethel abyssal या Hadal zone में divided है. ठीक है, anyways, now if we talk about the vertical division, then again it will comprise of the photic zone जैसे वहां पर था and your aphotic zone. ठीक, now photic zone is said to be as epipelagic, or aphotic zone is further divided into mesopelagic, bathypelagic, abyssal pelagic, hedal pelagic, depending upon what depth it is. So it is this depth is greater than 6 kilometers up to 10 kilometers. Okay, this is between 2 kilometers to 4 kilometers. This is up to the 700 meters to 1 kilometer of depth, and then above that is your mesopelagic, and then up to 100 meter of distance is your 50 meter of distance is your photic zone. ये डिवीजन क्लियर हुआ बेटा? ये आपका डिवीजन क्लियर हुआ? ये कैसे होता है लेयर्स का ओशियन और मराइन इकोसिस्टम में और आपके पॉन्ड इकोसिस्टम में? ओके, फाइन फाइन फाइन, ठीक है. तो हमेशा याद रखो, जब हम वर्टिकल है ना क्लासिफिकेशन के बारे में बात करें, तो इट्स मोस्टली बेस्ड ऑन द डेप्थ इन टर्म्स ऑफ हाउ मच अमाउंट ऑफ सनलाइट द सरफेस इज रिसीविंग एंड द एमिटस गोइंग इनटू द बॉटम. ठीक है, और जब हम हॉरिजॉन्टल लेयर्स के डिस्टिंग्विश के बारे में बात करते हैं, सो this is one that is shallow and one that is away from this shallow region, that is your oceanic part. Okay, so this is further divided, this is of two types, the littoral and the pelagic. Pelagic is further divided into neritic and oceanic. पॉन्ड इकोसिस्टम में क्या होता है, सिर्फ लिटोरल और पेलाजिक आपका सिर्फ एक ही जोन अपने आप में होता है. ठीक है, जिसे हम है ना हाँ पेलाजिक बोलते हैं. ठीक है, ना देन पेलाजिक में क्योंकि डेप्थ तो पॉन्ड्स की इतनी होती नहीं है, ज्यादा से ज्यादा 50 मीटर या 100 मीटर की होगी, तो वो सिर्फ फोटिक और एफोटिक जोन में डिवाइडेड है, जैसे और लिम्फेटिक एंड प्रोफंड, दैट्स इट. यहाँ पर लेकिन बहुत ज्यादा है. सो द फोटिक जोन इज देयर एंड एफोटिक जोन इज देयर, वेयर एफोटिक जोन is divided further into mesopelagic, bathypelagic and so on so on so on. ठीक है, so I hope these layers are now as आप इस तरह. ठीक है, कोस्टल जोन में क्या क्या आपका रहता है, ये तो आपके सी या ओपन सी के बारे में डिस्कशन हो गया है. कोस्टल रीजन में now the coastal zone is very highly productive regions and they are regions of very high primary productivity. ठीक है, प्राइमरी प्रोडक्टिविटी के बारे में हमने पहले ही डिस्कस किया है. ये उन जगह पर सबसे ज्यादा होगा जहां पर ह्यूज अमाउंट ऑफ now we left on this action and there is, तो हम इसे फटाक से खत्म करके we will jump on to another unit which is your natural resources. मैं natural resources और pollution आपका एक साथ कवर करा दूंगी, फिर हम बायोडाइवर्सिटी पे चलेंगे. ठीक है, okay, so I'll quickly take your attendance because I think there is a next class also. Which department? Mathematics department.